The stories you are about to hear will be heard for the first time on this channel. They may harm you psychologically. I would appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe to my channel. Good vibes. The Lighthouse Keeper's Secret Emma. Callahan's breath misted in the chill of November as she stepped off the rusted bus and onto the gravel road leading to Seabrook. The coastal town, shrouded in mist and gloom, seemed almost forgotten by time. She adjusted her scarf, her eyes scanning the distance for any sign of the lighthouse that had brought her here. The disappearance of Thomas O'Connor, the lighthouse keeper, had captured her journalist instincts, and the eeriness of the town only fueled her determination. As Emma approached the town's only inn, a decrepit building with peeling paint and sagging eaves, she was greeted by wary eyes peering from behind curtains. The innkeeper, a stooped woman with gray hair, barely managed a smile as she handed Emma a key and directed her towards the old lighthouse keeper's cottage, which stood isolated at the end of the rocky path. The cottage was a relic of a bygone era, its wooden planks weathered by decades of harsh coastal winds. Emma unlocked the front door with a creak that seemed louder than expected. The interior was filled with dusty antiques and a sense of abandonment, yet something felt oddly familiar. She set her things down and began unpacking, her mind already racing with questions about the lighthouse and its missing keeper. That night, the wind howled outside, and Emma tried to shake off a sense of unease as she settled into an old armchair by the fireplace. The flames flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Just as she began to drift into sleep, she heard footsteps echoing from the empty rooms above. Emma froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The footsteps continued, slow and deliberate, before suddenly stopping. The next morning, Emma set out to explore the lighthouse. Its tall white tower loomed against the stormy sky, a solitary sentinel over the rocky shore. The door creaked open, and Emma entered the lighthouse, her footsteps echoing off the cold stone walls. Dust motes danced in the weak light filtering through the small windows. She found the main room, cluttered with old equipment and a faded logbook. As Emma perused the logbook, she discovered entries detailing increasingly erratic behavior from Thomas O'Connor. The last few entries mentioned strange occurrences: the light beacon turning on by itself, whispers in the wind, and an obsession with the Sea Witch legend. Emma's curiosity was piqued. The mysterious Sea Witch seemed to be central to the story. That evening, Emma sat at the dining table in the cottage, trying to make sense of her findings. The wind outside had picked up, and the distant cries of the sea seemed to pierce through the walls. She heard the sound of the lighthouse beacon activating, though she hadn't touched the controls. Emma's sense of dread deepened, and she resolved to speak with the townsfolk the next day. The townsfolk were as unforthcoming as she had expected. Each conversation was met with nervous glances and evasive responses. Emma visited the local library, hoping to find more information on Thomas O'Connor and the Sea Witch legend. The librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Hart, reluctantly pointed her to a dusty archive in the back. As Emma sifted through old newspaper clippings, she came across reports of shipwrecks dating back to the late 1800s, all attributed to the lighthouse's faulty beacon. The articles mentioned unexplained disappearances and strange sightings of ghostly figures near the shore. Emma's unease grew as she realized how deeply the lighthouse was entwined with tragedy. That night, as the storm outside intensified, Emma returned to the lighthouse. She wanted to explore further, but felt an inexplicable pull to the top of the tower. The wind howled, and the structure groaned under the strain. Emma climbed the narrow staircase,
each step echoing through the hollow space. At the top, she found the beacon room, the mechanism silent and dormant. The view from the window was obscured by rain and fog, but Emma could barely make out the shadowy outline of the ocean below. Suddenly, she felt a cold draft and heard a whispering voice that sent shivers down her spine. Emma spun around but saw nothing. She turned back to the window and noticed a figure moving on the rocks below. It was indistinct, almost translucent, but unmistakably human. Emma's pulse quickened. The apparition seemed to beckon her. She hesitated, then descended the stairs with mounting dread. The following morning, Sheriff Hank Williams arrived at the cottage, his face lined with concern. He introduced himself and, seeing Emma's determination, reluctantly agreed to share what he knew. His reluctance hinted at a deeper connection to the mystery, and Emma sensed he held crucial information. Sheriff Williams explained that Thomas O'Connor had become obsessed with a local legend, the Sea Witch who had once terrorized the coast. The legend spoke of a vengeful spirit that haunted the waters, seeking revenge on those who wronged her. Thomas had believed the Sea Witch was connected to the strange occurrences at the lighthouse. Emma and Sheriff Williams decided to investigate the lighthouse together. As they examined the beacon room, they found evidence of recent tampering. The mechanisms had been altered, suggesting that someone or something had been trying to manipulate the light. Emma's thoughts raced as she considered the implications. The storm continued to rage outside, and Emma and the sheriff were forced to take shelter in the lighthouse. The wind howled and the rain battered against the windows. The tension between them was palpable as they searched for clues, each creak of the building amplifying their anxiety. As night fell, the lighthouse took on an even more ominous atmosphere. Emma and the sheriff huddled in the main room, trying to stay warm by the fire. Suddenly, they heard a series of loud bangs coming from above. The noises were followed by eerie whispers that seemed to float through the air. The lighthouse beacon flickered on and off, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Emma and the sheriff exchanged worried glances. The strange occurrences seemed to be escalating, and their fear was palpable. Emma's thoughts turned to the Sea Witch legend and what it might mean for them. The wind grew fiercer, and the lighthouse seemed to sway in the storm. Emma and the sheriff braced themselves against the howling gusts, their breaths visible in the cold air. The lighthouse was no longer a mere structure, but a living entity with a malevolent presence. Emma discovered a hidden compartment in the floor of the beacon room. Inside was a small, ancient book bound in weathered leather. The pages were filled with cryptic symbols and writings about the Sea Witch. Emma realized that this book might hold the key to understanding the curse. As they delved into the book, the wind outside seemed to intensify, and the lighthouse trembled. The cryptic writing spoke of rituals and sacrifices needed to appease the Sea Witch. Emma and Sheriff Williams understood that their lives might be at risk if they couldn't uncover the truth. The storm raged on, and Emma and the sheriff decided to perform a ritual described in the book. They set up candles and arranged the symbols as instructed. The ritual was intended to pacify the Sea Witch and hopefully put an end to the haunting. As they completed the ritual, the temperature in the lighthouse dropped drastically. The candles flickered and then extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. Emma and the sheriff could hear the sound of footsteps approaching, each step growing louder and more menacing. The door to the beacon room creaked open, and a shadowy figure appeared in the doorway. Emma's heart raced as she recognized the figure as Thomas O'Connor, though he seemed translucent and ethereal. His eyes were hollow and filled with a deep sorrow. Thomas's ghostly form spoke in a voice that echoed with anguish. He revealed that he had been trying to protect the town from the sea witch's wrath. The lighthouse was cursed, and Taas had been consumed by the very spirit he sought to uncover. Emma and the sheriff listened in horror as Thomas explained the sea witch's tragic story. She had once been a beautiful maiden betrayed by a sailor, and in her vengeful fury, she had cursed the sea and all who sailed upon it. Her spirit was bound to the lighthouse, seeking revenge on those who came near. Thomas pleaded for their help, asking them to perform one final ritual to free his spirit and end the curse. Emma and the sheriff agreed, determined to lay the ghost to rest and protect the town from further harm. They gathered the remaining ingredients from the book and prepared for the final ritual. As they chanted the incantations, the lighthouse seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy. The walls trembled, and the wind howled with a deafening roar. The sea witch's vengeful spirit materialized before them, her form shifting between ethereal and monstrous. Her eyes glowed with a fierce rage as she advanced towards Emma and the sheriff. The storm outside seemed to intensify, as if the very elements were aligned against them. Emma and the sheriff continued the ritual, their voices growing hoarse as they recited the final words. The sea witch's spirit writhed and howled, her form twisting in agony. The lighthouse's beacon flared to life, casting a blinding light that cut through the darkness. The sea witch's spirit shrieked in fury as the light surrounded her, her form disintegrating into a swirl of mist and shadow. The storm outside began to abate, the winds dying down as the curse was lifted. The lighthouse's beacon dimmed, and a sense of calm settled over the area. Emma and the sheriff stood exhausted but victorious. The lighthouse, once a symbol of dread, now stood silent and still. The storm had passed, leaving behind a clear, starlit sky. They had succeeded in breaking the curse and freeing the spirits trapped by the sea witch's wrath. As dawn broke, Emma and Sheriff Williams made their way back to the town. The once silent townsfolk greeted them with a mixture of relief and gratitude. The dark cloud that had hung over Seabrook seemed to have lifted, and the town began to return to a semblance of normalcy. Emma's investigation had revealed the truth behind the lighthouse's haunting, and her story would serve as a testament to the bravery of those who faced the darkness. Sheriff Williams expressed his gratitude for Emma's help, and the two parted ways with a newfound respect for each other. Emma returned to Boston, her mind filled with the memories of Seabrook and the Sea Witch. Her article about the lighthouse and its haunting was met with acclaim, but the experience had left her with a lingering sense of unease. She had faced something far beyond the ordinary, and it had changed her forever. Back in Seabrook, the lighthouse stood as a silent guardian, its beacon now a symbol of hope rather than dread. The townsfolk went about their lives, their fears eased by the resolution of the curse. The lighthouse remained a testament to the resilience of those who faced the darkness. Emma occasionally thought of Seabrook and the lighthouse, wondering if the sea witch's spirit had truly been laid to rest. She hoped that the calm would endure, and that the town would never again be plagued by such malevolent forces. The legend of the Sea Witch became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the power of ancient curses and the bravery required to confront them. Emma's story inspired others to face their fears and seek the truth, no matter how daunting it might seem. The lighthouse's history was now one of triumph over darkness, a beacon of hope for future generations. Emma's name became associated with courage and perseverance, and her story was passed down as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. As the years passed, the memory of the Sea Witch faded into legend, and the lighthouse continued to stand watch over the coast. Emma Callahan's journey had come to an end, but the lessons learned and the bravery shown would be remembered for generations to come.